My name is Madison Lemansky. I'm the COO of SheMoney, and it is my privilege to host you today and also to invite our final panel of the day. I'll begin with our wonderful, incredible moderator, Errin Haines of the 19th News. Let's give her a round of applause. And joining her will be Jennifer Siebel Newsom, Dawn Porter, and Jennifer Robinson.
Not at all. Okay, hey y'all. How y'all doing? Yeah, again, I'm Errin Haines, a founding mother and editor-at-large at the 19th News. Thank you so much. Gotten a lot of love today from a lot of you about the 19th. If you don't yet know about the 19th, we encourage you to look us up, 19thnews.org, really easy. But honestly, I just want to say how proud we are to be in conversation with you all today around the power of women's voices. This has been a very powerful day. I don't know how many of you all got to be here for the other programming that has happened today, but this really has just underscored the power of women's voices, of narratives for and about women as really key to how we are going to show up right now in this moment. So at the 19th, we cover power, we cover who has it, we cover how it's protected, and also who pays the price when our institutions fail. And these two films, When a Witness Recants and Silenced, sit squarely in that mission. So we want to talk with these three women whose work in very different arenas is shaping how this moment is documented and contested and understood. Just to introduce the panelists again for you all, Jennifer Siebel Newsom is a filmmaker, gender equity advocate, and California's first partner working at the intersection of culture, policy, and public leadership. Dawn Porter is an award-winning documentary filmmaker whose work interrogates power, race, gender, and the institutions that shape public truth. And Jennifer Robinson is an international human rights lawyer and author of Silenced Women, Why the Law Fails Women and How to Fight Back. She's here at Sundance premiering the documentary film Silenced, which is based on her work. Absolutely. Jennifer Siebel Newsom, I want to start with you because you've long described yourself as a storyteller. And I want to ask you, before politics entered your life so directly, what drew you to filmmaking?
What drew me to filmmaking? So women are essential, and we matter, and we are more often than not rendered invisible in positions of power and influence, or misrepresented, as we know the media has continued and consistently done, and technology is exacerbating that on steroids, both the misrepresentation and the underrepresentation and the silencing. So probably what drew me to storytelling was witnessing the injustice and how the media is the greatest cultural communicator, as Pat Mitchell taught me way back when in our first interview with Misrepresentation, and how the media was playing a role in the counter to what I'd witnessed in the real world in rooms like this, where women have power and agency, but are not recognized in the systems of power, not just in our country, but around the world. And so really it was witnessing both the underrepresentation and the misrepresentation in my short journey in the entertainment industry, and being in front of the camera and thinking that that was a horrific place for women to be, and wanting to rewrite that narrative and realizing that I had the power to tell those stories, and then overcoming people telling me misrepresentation had been made before, we had bigger problems overseas, who was I to be making this documentary? This whatever, nobody filmmaker, feminist type, whatever, however they describe me. Or that we'd achieve parity in our country because Hillary Clinton had run for the presidency. And at the time, we had one female in leadership, Speaker Pelosi. So I share that just because I knew something was wrong, and people were afraid. Women were afraid to speak up and speak out, and clearly I wasn't. And that's sort of that sparked the whole journey.
Well, the kids are reflecting a lot on 2016 these days, so good on you for bringing that moment back up for all of us in the room. Jennifer Robinson, I want to come to you now because, and I'm so glad that you are able to join us because this is a global conversation that we need to be having. The things that we are talking about in terms of equity, gender equity, what that means for democracy, what that means for safety, that is not just a conversation that we need to be having here. It is something that is connected to folks all around this world. And so from your perspective, I want to come to you and ask you about kind of where legal and policy systems are most consistently failing women.
Look, in so many ways, the law is failing women. The Me Too movement was really a reaction to the failure of the criminal justice system. Yes. Women are not getting the justice that we deserve in the courts, and so turning to speaking out publicly about it. And what our film is about and what I've written about in my work and as a lawyer worked on is what we've seen after women broke the cultural silence with Me Too, that there's been this legal backlash, a weaponization of defamation laws, in particular what we cover in the film, non-disclosure agreements and the like, to reimpose the status quo of silence. And we're seeing that everywhere. This is not just the big celebrity cases. I acted for Amber Heard in the Johnny Depp case in the UK where we won and we proved that he was violent towards her. But it's not these big celebrity cases. And what we show through my book and the film is that these cases are happening everywhere, irrespective of culture, irrespective of geography, irrespective of religion, irrespective of the type of legal system. It's happening everywhere. Different legal systems, same story. And we wanted to show how urgent this global problem is because violence against women is the most prolific human rights abuse in the world. 1 in 3 women will suffer gender-based violence. As we all know in this room, there will be survivors in this room. But if we can't talk about it, we can't deal with it. And so silence enables violence. And so for me as a free speech lawyer who has spent the last 15 years defending your First Amendment.
Hello. Thank you for your service. Absolutely.
Whether I'm defending a national security case about a whistleblower or whether I'm defending women survivors and journalists women who are speaking out about their experience or journalists trying to report on it, this is shutting down public interest speech. This is chilling women's ability to come out and speak out. And if we can't understand the extent of the problem, Me Too allowed us to see how big this problem was. If we can't understand the extent of it, we can't make policy. We can't make good law. We can't properly fund initiatives to end violence against women. And so from my point of view, this is about free speech and it's about democracy. It's about women's ability to freely participate in our democracy. And what does free speech mean if we can't afford to defend it? So for most women, being sued for defamation will bankrupt you.
Yes.
And it's enough to self-censor. So it's not just the effect that these defamation cases have on the high-profile women you see. So our film covers Amber Heard and covers other high-profile and less well-known cases around the world to show the very real lived experience of women, the financial, emotional, physical toll that these cases being sued for defamation has on journalists and on survivors who are being sued. And shows why we need to change it.
Yes. And if it's taking that kind of toll on those women, right? What does that mean for the everyday women who are confronting this every single day?
Exactly. So what happened to Amber Heard is not just about what happened to Amber Heard.
Correct.
It is about what it says to every other woman who might want to speak out. And it's not just the defamation cases, so that's a legal silencing, but the way the online space is being manipulated and weaponized against women, the disinformation, if we look at what happened with Amber Heard, over half of the online activity was inauthentic. Look what happened to Blake Lively and what is continuing to happen to Blake Lively, which I hope is making more people reflect on what happened to Amber. We're seeing a pattern of the online space being weaponized to silence women. And what I say about that case, everybody had a view, your team Johnny or team Amber, and people were piling on online. And my point was always to people, well, Johnny and Amber are probably never going to see what you wrote about them online, but you know who will see it? Is the woman in your life who has never spoken out about her abuse. And do you think she will come to you having seen what you wrote about this case online? And I think we need to have these not just law reform conversations, but cultural conversations, and about how we better protect women in the online space.
Yes. And starting with the people in our lives, such an important point. Dawn, I want to come to you now, because if nothing else, we're going to have an intersectional conversation today. I seriously, I mean, what strikes me about your work is really the people that you choose to center. It's Black people, it's women, it's unsung heroes, it's people impacted by injustice, which is obviously what your film is about. What would you say about what art can reveal about inequality and abuse that policy debates kind of tend to obscure?
I love that question so much. So,
I try.
You did. So my background also is I'm a lawyer. I defended newspapers, working for Baker Hostetler for the first 5 years of my career. I wasn't exclusively a First Amendment lawyer, but I did do some of that work. And then I went to ABC Television, then ABC News. And, saw the journalism, and I was the director of standards and practices. So the question was not what we say legally, it's what should we say as journalists. And I think we're not doing right by the profession, and we're losing. There was my boss always used to say, Carrie Smith, and she would say, if you lose the trust of the audience, you will not gain it back.
That's right.
And so, we kind of went about our work that way. But what I saw from when journalism is done well, it is the reason that it is powerful is it makes you connect with a person or a culture that you may not have experienced, but you understand our common humanity. And so you see yourself in the story of somebody who's Indigenous, somebody who is a different race or culture or gender, and that there's just nothing that connects us so easily. And so a number of the films, I really enjoy doing films that kind of flip what we think we know about people. So one of the films I did is a film called The Lady Bird Diaries. It's about Lady Bird Johnson. And she recorded 123 hours of audio tapes during her time as First Lady. And so we took those tapes and we set them to archive. So there's no talking heads in it. It is just her voice telling her story. And what was, I was really committed to not having any living people in the movie. And for a very specific reason. It's because I knew very little about Lady Bird. I had done a 4-part series about Bobby Kennedy. I had done a film about John Lewis. And so Lady Bird was there, but not there.
Yes.
And so I was very curious about that. And then we went to do, filmmaking process. We start where we always start, is we do requests for footage of the protagonist. First request for Lady Bird, 2 pages came back. I was like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
She's the First Lady of the United States during the 60s when film was exploding. How is that possible? So then we asked for President's wife, no name. All of a sudden, all this starts coming back. And then First Lady, not even President's wife, First Lady. So I was like, fuck that noise. I am going to make a whole film that is just, and so the thing about Lady Bird is she was also a journalist. And she was a very methodical reporter of who was attending the speeches that she would give or Lyndon would give. And so we went back to her diaries, and Lady Bird would say, Nancy Dickerson from NBC News was here on this time. And so then we went back to NBC, where we had already requested footage, and said, can you please give us Nancy Dickerson's footage? And there's Lady Bird giving a speech. And so that's how we made the movie.
Wow.
But so, if you ask people about Lady Bird, they'll say, oh, didn't she plant flowers? Which is so incredibly insulting. Lady Bird, Lyndon Johnson signed 322 bills into law that were environmental protection because of Lady Bird's work. Richard Nixon started the EPA based on what Lady Bird brought to light about how we were ruining the environment. So, she planted some flowers and she did a lot of other things. And when you look, you're always finding the she did, but you have to look. And so if you don't have women asking these questions, no one's looking.
Yes, and telling our stories accurately, right? So I mean, listening to you, even talking about Lady Bird, in addition to this current film, I mean, you're telling stories that are challenging dominant narratives, right? When that happens, where do you encounter the most resistance? I know we don't have much time left.
Well, let me count the ways. I spoke this morning about making a film about abortion providers. And I think in some ways the resistance you can be, or you can also, the filmmaker can be, the resistance can be within you. So I had not had an abortion. I had not been to an abortion clinic. And I realized I had all these ideas about what an abortion clinic looked like. And then I thought, where am I getting these ideas? I'm getting them from the anti-choice movement. And so I was appalled at myself that unknowingly, unwittingly, if we are surrounded, if we are swimming in these images, we're taking them in even though we're not conscious of it. So, we had this male, the first shooter was male, and the abortion doctor said, "Do you want to see the procedure?" And I was like, "No, no, thank you." And my cameraman was like, "No, I'll go in there." He comes out 5 minutes later, and he goes, "That ain't no baby." And it was really important that we observe and that we challenge ourselves. So sometimes you can be the resistance. But I think if you are honest and you're telling the truth as you can best discover it, people respect your attempts to tell the truth and not be manipulative. I think that's really important, to not be a manipulative filmmaker.
Yeah, and also the curiosity and awareness that you brought to that project, I'm sure, was helpful as well. I want to ask all of you to talk about the work that you're doing and what makes that work, particularly these films, feel urgent, not really just as a film, but I hear at least a couple of you talking about kind of the work that you're doing as a type of intervention in this broader cultural moment around truth and power and belief. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I consider all of my work defending free speech about defending those who speak truth to power, including women who are speaking out about their own abuse, because gender-based violence is an abuse of power. And for me, this is a globally urgent story because of this avalanche of defamation claims we're seeing and the silencing I've seen. So I was so frustrated by what I was seeing in my legal practice and angry about it, I wrote a book. And I always wanted that book to become a film because for me, I've always believed so firmly in the power of storytelling through documentary film and its ability to not just raise awareness, but engage people's sense of empathy so that we can create change. And so I really wanted to start this much bigger cultural conversation about what's happening in the law. A lot of what you see in the high-profile cases, they are the tip of the iceberg of what's actually going on. So the lawyers understand that a lot of the time a legal threat letter, a defamation threat letter, is enough because of the risk of bankruptcy, the legal costs, the stress, the financial cost of it. People will self-censor. So we don't even see a large part of the problem. And so I'm hoping through using this film that we can start to shift narratives about how women are treated when they speak out, the law reform that we need. So, for example, Johnny Depp, had he sued in California, there's anti-SLAPP protections that would have protected Amber's free speech about a matter of public interest. Marilyn Manson tried to sue his ex-partner and it was thrown out. He went to Virginia where there's no anti-SLAPP protection and was able to sue her and drag her through a second case after we'd already proved it in court in the UK. So he could forum shop and find a jurisdiction where he could bring the case. So I think these kinds of legal protections are really important, and I want to start this global conversation using this film, showing it in parliaments, taking it to Virginia with a new government, and also showing it at the UN so we can change, to make it easier. I don't want any other woman to go through what Amber Heard went through. I don't want any other woman to go through what Brittany Higgins goes through, a young political staffer who was raped in the Minister for Defence's office in Australia, in our parliament building, and then has been through a failed criminal trial, government reviews. I've counted 14 separate defamation claims that have been throwing around. What she's been through is horrendous. The online space, the attacks in the media. She was forced to leave the country. Like Amber was forced to leave the US because of what happened to her and the treatment she suffered in the public domain. So we need to make it easier. Otherwise, women aren't going to come forward.
Yeah.
I have colleagues who call me saying, my client doesn't want to take this case forward because she's being told, don't be an Amber, no one's going to believe you.
And it's feeling like it's not worth it. Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer and Dawn, you had some thoughts on what Jennifer was just saying.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, and I kind of wanted to connect the dots here. I think the power of these films is not just to shift hearts and minds and attitudes and behaviors, but it's also to transform culture and systems. And it's funny, just listening to all this, I feel like I'm in a unique space where I mean, you all are doing it, Sundance is doing it, but I feel like we have to actually be collectively more intentional together, bringing these films into places in front of policymakers, in front of legislatures across the country. Because that is you talk about Lady Bird, and I'm first partner of California. I did not take the title First Lady because I've considered all the women before me to be partners and rock stars and brilliant, accomplished women in their own right. But even in democratic institutions, we disregard and devalue the wife, the feminine. We don't pay her. She volunteers. I was just thinking about the National Governors Association. Like, I would love the mayors, when my husband was mayor of San Francisco, that was a much more collaborative, progressive crew, even with conservative mayors, who actually really were excited about, narrative, social impact documentaries. And I just remember, it was sort of embarrassing, showing up at some of the earlier National Governors Association events. And once again, you're relegated to, and I love art, but you're relegated to sort of a circular table where we're stuck in our lanes of what women are, what's deemed appropriate for first ladies to engage in. And, at some point, once my husband was sick, something had happened, he could not travel, so I represented him. And it was fabulous because we had a Democratic head of the National Governors Association at the time who really was respectful of me and gave me clout and the power to convene and speak on behalf of, the topic was children's mental health and well-being. And it took him, who had an incredible partner, who was also respected and had her own agenda like me, to give me the platform and space. But historically, and those institutions are backwards. They're still behind the times and where we are in the private sector and where we all deem and ourselves to be. And so anyway, I just share that because I think we have this opportunity, all of us, because we all have voices and we have our own narrative story telling platforms, and we have enough confidence and we know what's right and we're not afraid to speak to truth to power. And so I do thank you once again, Jackie, for convening us all, because I do believe the collection of these stories and narratives together, shared with policymakers across the country, I mean, we're going to have a lot of cleanup after this current mess that we're in. And now is the time, right? Because even if there are more women in leadership in legislatures across the country and even at the federal level than there were prior, and even if there are more female governors, the institutions themselves are still super conservative and backwards. And so anyway, I just wanted to offer that I think there's this beautiful moment that we all have together, and I would love to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and really, the stories of a lot of these individual stories really illuminating systemic issues is also what we're talking about. I'm hearing all of you really talking about how films like these can reveal how institutions have become invested in silence, right? So I want to ask you, Dawn, and you, Jennifer, like, what mechanisms did you see, whether they were formal or informal, right? Because I think it's important to name both of those, that actively discourage women, that actively discourage people of color, other marginalized folks from telling the truth.
Jennifer, you're pointing out to something that is, I have seen so many times. There's actually a name for it. It's called the political widow. And she is allowed to have a certain lane. We saw it certainly with Michelle Obama, right? She couldn't advocate for healthy food. We saw it with Hillary. I was a young paralegal, my first job out of college, working for an environmental law firm. And there was a partner in the office who had a picture of Hillary on a broom on his door. And I remember so well, at first I was appalled, but I remember so well, we were going on the Hill, and Hillary, if you will remember, was tasked with healthcare. I think we can all say, confidently now, there was no one in the world who was more qualified to try and bring, some attention to the healthcare. And she was literally bullied out of that position. I'm making a film right now about Winnie and Nelson Mandela, emphasis on Winnie, because we don't know the Winnie story. And she did some terrible things. But, I say to people, so Nelson Mandela was in jail for 27 years. He could not give an interview. He could not take his picture. He was not allowed to speak. So how do you know what you know about him?
Right. Right.
How do you know what you know about him? And it's because in the New York Times, the first 10 years of his incarceration, he was mentioned once. Winnie invited the press and broke her banning order, her banishment order. She was in solitary confinement for 491 days. Her children were taken. She was tortured. Yeah, she got a little violent. And it's not to excuse, but to say, what position do we put these women in? And then the footage that is probably the most impactful to me in this story is he gets out. She's instrumental in getting him out because of the pressure that was brought because of and then the interviews are happening and they're asking Nelson all the questions and she's sitting right next to him and you see the rage coming up. And and when you see the movie that we're trying to make, you see why she's in a rage, because everything she did went nothing. People just wanted to talk to him. And all the films that are coming out, they still just want to talk about him. Not taking anything from him, but she has a story. And so many women have these stories. So you were right. These systems, every first partner has to start over, elbowing out to make her space. Why can't we just assume that she's going to have some space? Yeah. And so when you have a person who actively, avoids taking up that space, it sets us back. And that is one of the many, many, many criticisms of where we are now. Like, you are not just letting yourself down, you're letting the rest of us down by not taking advantage of the platform that you have and making it all about you. I'll say it.
Yeah.
No, and
that does bring me back to you, Jennifer. And listen, if you want to get in good trouble, feel free to do so here. To what Dawn is saying, how does your proximity to politics and governance, does that kind of change the kinds of stories that you feel compelled to tell now?
well, look, I made Fair Play to, which looks at all of the invisible work that women shoulder and the benefit to not just men themselves and children, but our society when men lean into more care at home. Mm-hmm. I just really wanted to render visible the invisible. And it really was a nod to partnership, because I will say, and it's funny, just to keep going with what you're saying and to personalize it a little bit, in any institution, you have, like, we have an incredible administration, and there were so many, especially at the start, so many working women that worked for my husband, working mothers, that worked for my husband. And eventually, after the pandemic and wildfires and crises after crises, like, at some point, you got to go be a mom or take a less stressful career trajectory. But I think for me, the challenge has also been the younger generation that for whatever reason, because they attained a little power in a man's world, which isn't just politics. It's obviously not unique to politics. It's in finance, right? It's in entertainment, as we all know. It's in tech, right? Dependent on who your mentors are, who your bosses are, who's really socialized you and developed you. If you haven't seen and valued the feminine in power, or that hasn't mentored you, there's, I cannot tell you how many times, and it shocked me, I've been elbowed out of the room or elbowed out of a seat or something, or just by a young, ambitious person who, just sadly didn't understand that doing that to the first partner or spouse that's holding everything together so that that person can actually be a public force for good in the world is actually damaging that family's unit and strength. Another example is just that was always really interesting to me, and again, because I'm so excited to see your new film, or the Mandela film and Winnie, because there have been moments where I'm just saying this in a vulnerable moment where people are like, "Oh my God, your husband is so amazing," blah blah blah, and I'm like, who do you think fucking makes all this possible?
That part.
I'm like, come on, where do you think you got that idea? Who is making sure that his children are still surviving, that he has a team, that he actually is championing this issue? Like, come on, people, it's about partnership. And it's not about, I guess I want to say, it's a village. Like, we're all in this together. We live in this rugged individualistic society, but none of us are getting anywhere on our own. I'm here because of all of you women who have enabled me to be here, and women that aren't here right now. So, and men, and my husband, who's probably like, please come home tonight. So I'm not alone with the kids, So anyway, I just wanted to share.
Listen, we appreciate you telling the truth up here. Really. No, because it does matter. It is important. And you do have this vantage point. And so, I mean, just listening to you just now, what would you say about how proximity to power, or people who want proximity to power, how does that shape who feels able to speak, whose stories are told, and who doesn't get to speak?
No, I see how power can corrupt. I see how money can corrupt. I so want to just elevate all the people with power and money who aren't that, and there's so many, and you're all peer in some fashion or form.
I know. We only got a little bit of time. I know. But yes.
But I refuse to. I see the power in the feminine and women coming together over and over again. We have our second female pro tem since we've been in office. Again, my husband's had 2 female chiefs of staff. I have only women in my office, no offense to men. I really see the power in the feminine. And I think California, I'm so grateful to be in California because I think we are a model for the nation in terms of uplifting women's voices and women's power. We're far from perfect. We still have a long ways to go. I would have loved to have seen all the women that were running for the governorship stay in the race, and they didn't. I think there's just one currently. And I'd love to see women, more female first partners. And, I was kind of bummed. One of my girlfriends, Anna Malika Tubb, gave herself, when her husband was mayor of Stockton, gave herself the title first partner. And I was so grateful, but I was hoping to inspire more of a movement because, again, it wasn't about me. It was just a signal to the world that we would have a female mayor or governor, or that we would have more female mayors and more female governors, that we would have more LGBTQ plus leaders, and that there was a recognition that partnership ultimately makes the world go round. And so, I have hope, but it requires this and more of this, and it requires all of these brilliant films. And then it requires, for example, our awesome collective of women who, sadly still, I would say there are women in the legislature still with that scarcity mentality, right? There's still too much of that. But again, I think if you get to that tipping point and if you have the right healthy leadership, you will start to see coalition and build and folks coalescing around a broader feminine agenda. But I think that's where we need to get more of your films seen by these women. And I like to say, as California goes, so can go the country.
Well, Jennifer, I want to come back to you because your book, Silenced Women, is the book that this documentary is based on. And you also talked about Me Too, and the book offers like this clear-eyed account of the post-Me Too landscape, not just who spoke up, but the legal systems and the media dynamics and public disbelief that was mobilized in response to that. So I'm wondering kind of what you felt like was missing then from the public conversation that you needed to put on record, and what you still feel like is missing.
Well, first, the fact that this was just not being talked about because so much of it is not in the public domain. Like I said, a legal threat letter is sent and it remains confidential, it's privileged, so I can't talk about it. So much of the problem is unseen. And so the reason I wrote the book was that I wanted to write about specific cases to explain those big high-profile cases to the public, but also explain in general terms what was actually happening in the law in a way that I was able to. So to give general examples of what I was actually seeing. Mm-hmm. But I also want people to understand the historic context, and this speaks to what you've both been talking about. But historically, when defamation laws were made, women, we were the property of our father and then our husband. We didn't have any rights at all. And now, we have a whole chapter in the book talking about laws made by men for men and the importance of female representation, leadership in the legislature, women on the bench, which shifts and changes conversations and makes it better for women. But I also wanted people to understand the historical context. This is not the first time that defamation laws have been weaponized to stifle a progressive social movement. We saw it during the civil rights movement.
Yes.
The most famous case in this country, New York Times and Sullivan, was actually about, as you know, about a police commissioner who sued over reporting around brutality towards the civil rights protests. So it's really important to, I think, place what's happening now in that historical context and think about where we want to go and where we want the law to go. Because, you know, this is the most prolific human rights abuse in the world. If we can't talk about it, we can't deal with it. And we all have lived experience of it in our families, amongst our friend groups. And this is an issue that is stifling women's development.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's true. And it also makes me wonder if you all can talk about just kind of how to navigate the responsibility of exposing these harms, right? While also protecting a lot of these people who are already vulnerable.
I feel a deep sense of responsibility to the women in the film. So does our film team. And I want to say I'm really proud that this is an Australian-made and funded independent documentary film telling an urgent global problem, urgent global story. But it's women telling women's stories of their lived experience. And to me, that's really important in terms of how the film's being told, but also our responsibility to the women who are deeply traumatized, who have been traumatized by their experience of violence and then again by being sued. Many women see being sued by defamation by their alleged perpetrator as a continuation of the abuse. And we need to talk about it. We need to have more women talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I would love to take you up on your offer to collaborate. But perhaps you can show it to the governor of Virginia.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Exactly. Get it in front of you. Yeah. I mean, yes, you talk about, I mean, just the risk of telling story.
We've had a legal threat already.
Yeah.
I mean, to get this story told, we are telling stories of some of the most litigious men who have already sued because of the things we're talking about. So the legal process, I'm a lawyer, I wrote a book, but I had to have that independently legally reviewed by other lawyers. And it's really risky, it's scary. I could be bankrupted if I'm sued for defamation for my book or for the film. So it's one of these, it's a really challenging subject matter to tackle because of the legal and cost risks. I'm so proud of the way in which the duty of care with which we approach the women, how we ensure that they're all protected by our insurance. So if any of them are sued, they're protected. But it's so important that we tell these stories. So for me, there is a great personal risk in writing that book and in telling this story. Our team, our film team, they're all at risk too. The women take a risk in speaking out again. Already we're seeing, I'm bracing myself for the backlash for putting my head above the parapet and telling this story. I can't look at X or any social media after this film. And our
It's just horrible.
IMDb page is being trolled by people who haven't seen the film. So it looks like it's had a terrible review, but these are people that haven't even seen
not
the
even
film.
seen it, but they
it's
have
like
the-
the manosphere is like, let's make this look like a shit film.
Right.
So it doesn't get picked up. It doesn't get seen. It's just another way that they try to silence us and these films. But really, I mean, it's such an honor to be here on this panel with such brilliant women and filmmakers, and to be in this room. So I really needed it today after what's happened this week.
Same.
But we also need your help, and we need funds to be able to get this out there and to take it around the world, to show it to policymakers. I want to take it. It is a global story. Like, I want to use this film to call on Sierra Guerra to stop litigating against these journalists who are trying to tell these stories. In Latin America, I want to use it to lift up the voices of women and fundraise for women who are doing this important work, because too often we don't get paid for it. Mm-hmm. So I don't get paid for this advocacy. I do it because I care about it.
Right.
But if we're going to get it out there and get it around the world, we need support.
Errin, I wanted to, this morning, Amy Redford, just exquisitely, beautifully talked about the legacy of her father and the starting of this festival, and how, much intention he brought to it. But she also said something really important. She said, my child is struggling.
Yes.
And I'm trying to balance that with what I need to do. So I wanted to share, while I was making my first film, you're away from home a lot. So my kids were little, and even then before that, I was trying to work full time, and I was like determined to host the play date. And I think like a lot of you who work know that determination. You're like, I will host this play date if it kills me. And so I blocked and tackled. I took a vacation day to take this play date. So the play date starts. The kids are 3. Within like a half an hour, I'm just like watching them. I'm like, they're not doing anything that's that interesting. I'm gonna go work. So, but I'm listening, and my older son was literally like 3.5, and I hear him having conversation, and I'm feeling a lot of work guilt at this point. I'm away from home too much, and I hear him he say like, my mom's a lawyer. What does your mom do? To his friend. And his friend says, this is not true. This is the child's perspective. Before you hate his mom, the kid says, my mom doesn't do anything. And then my son goes, and this is at a time I was feeling really guilty about being away from home. And my kid goes, maybe my mom could get your mom a job. And I thought, I'm here like crying that I'm not home. And what they see is really important, and they see us. And then I'll tell you a very quick second story about my second kid. Was in junior high, and I said something about what the girls were wearing. There were like a lot of butt cheeks, and I was seeing a lot of, very short shorts. And I said something, I was like, oh my goodness, Will, those shorts. And he said, are you sexualizing young girls? And I was like, oh my God, I am sexualizing young girls. But they see us. And I know a lot of you struggle with this, because we are primary. Like we can say equal. There's something primal and primary. And they see what we're doing, and it's important that we're modeling this for our sons and daughters, that we can be good parents and we can do things that are important for our sustainability and for our society. So I want to share that.
It is so important that you are saying that, and that Amy said that this morning, talking about that piece, talking about that as something that is also a valuable part of parenting, right? Because by the time they make it to, maturity, to adulthood, you do find out that it does matter. And you may find out it matters along the way. At the age of 3, you could see that mattered. So I really love that you shared that, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room needed to hear that, because they may also be struggling with balancing this. Because why? Because society is not honoring that in the way that it needs to be honored, which, hello, fair play.
Yeah, the systems and institutions weren't designed by or for us, right? So that's the big problem. And that's why all of us with our unique lived experiences and perspectives need to be designing new systems that work for, in this country, the majority of us are dual income and single parent households. And so we need to, one of the things we've been imagining in California and working on is school, and this is and obvious to all of us, but like school hours are 8 to 3, work hours are 9 to however late, 6:30, 7, whatever. It doesn't match up. And then you have a whole competitive youth sports culture or any competitive dance or gymnastics culture, whatever it is that parents, moms in particular, are being pulled in a million directions. So
And I hope you ain't selling them Girl Scout cookies. Whole nother.
that's a whole other, kit and caboodle. So, it is one of the reasons why these convenings and women asserting their voices and their power is so critical.
All of you are, I've heard from all of you around, the credibility piece. There's also an outright disbelief piece, I think, that plays into this. And what the films that you all have worked, they show how credibility itself can just become a site of power, right? Especially for women, especially for people of color. Like, what would you say that these stories really tell us about who is believed in our democracy and who isn't, and why that matters?
So my film Here Now, which premieres tomorrow, so it's one of the late premieres.
Hello.
Thank you. It's called When a Witness Recants, and it's about 3 teenagers who were wrongfully convicted and spent 36 years in prison until Marilyn Mosby's Conviction Integrity Unit received a plea from them to investigate their case. So Marilyn and her deputy, Lauren Lipscomb, who is here, read this, did their investigation. They got them out in 48 hours. But who was not believed were these children. And so it took their advocating on behalf of themselves, but it shouldn't be that people's freedom is dependent on the luck of who is reading a petition. Our system should be stronger than that.
Yeah.
And so I have seen over and over. I made a film about abortion providers. The hate that we got back about why did they let themselves get pregnant. I saw so many women who wanted the babies, they couldn't afford them. And you have, just seeing people cry through interviews explaining that they wanted this pregnancy and could not, they were doing the responsible thing by their first child and by their lives. So I think we have to keep explaining to people, that these things do happen. Celebrities beat people up. And the fact that you loved his movie doesn't mean he's not a violent person. And so I'm sorry it's uncomfortable for your movie, loving, but your human loving should take precedence. There's other movies.
Yeah. And the other thing about your film, Dawn, it will make you think about just recantation. Right? Recantation, we often treat it basically just as proof that the allegation was false, right? But that's not always the case. And your film really complicates that assumption. And so I want to ask you about that. What recantation actually reveals about fear and about coercion and about survival.
Well, the 3 teenagers, they were 15 and 16 years old. They were sent to adult prison. One of them was 100 pounds, 5 feet tall. He calls himself jailbait. He says that's basically what I was. They were convicted based on the testimony of 5 other young people. The youngest one was 14. And the police interrogated each of them without their parents, threatened them, said that they would send their parents to jail. The police officer brought a gun into the interrogation and said, "Do you want to tell me the truth now or I will send you to jail?" And so they are victims of this police misconduct as well. And so what our film does is they had not seen the witness that was the primary person responsible for their incarceration. They had not seen them since they've been released from prison. They just got out of prison a few years ago. And so they all wanted to come together and talk about how they each were affected. And so that's what happens in our movie.
No, that's powerful. I think I want to close by just asking all of you, when people see these films, including the audiences here, I guess, what responsibility does witnessing these stories place on them, not just emotionally, but civically as well?
Well, first, I have been so thrilled by the reaction from audiences to this film, especially for the women in the film. We had 3 standing ovations on our premiere, and what that meant for Brittany Higgins, for example, who has been so horribly trolled and treated in the media, to receive such a warm welcome from the audiences and to see people resonate with her story was so special for me. But I hope audiences, they clearly were emotionally affected. I find it quite difficult actually after screenings, because so many women come and make disclosures to me and talk about why this film was important because it happened to them, or it happened to their sister, or it happened to their mum. And so I'm really glad that women are feeling validated by this story and feel able to come and speak about their experiences. But also we talk a lot about how can each individual audience member go away with that new understanding where they're checking their own bias and why they thought particular things about what they saw online about these cases, about these women who spoke out, and take on the responsibility of doing better themselves and also trying to educate people in their lives about how we can change the cultural conversation around this. So we talk about that a lot and at each screening, and we'll continue to be talking about that.
I want to thank all of you for your voices and for your work and for your witness. It matters. These stories matter, and our voices matter. And I just cannot think of a better way to be ending today. Any one of you I could have talked to for an hour, but to talk to the 3 of you together about this, it has been extremely powerful. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I say one thing?
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry. No sorries. So the film I'm working on right now, Miss Rep 2.0, is unabashed and holding tech titans and social media titans and Trump accountable. We don't say anything new. We just connect the dots. Mm-hmm. And I want to understand how we can collectively have each other's backs and have the women in your films back. I think that's the next thing we have to do as a community, because, look, everyone's being silenced right now. The DOJ is investigating everyone who is speaking out and trying to hold Donald Trump accountable. Everyone has had threats on their life. Everyone has had threats to their finances. So this is systemic right now across our country, and it's been practiced on women from the get-go. It's been practiced on communities of color from the get-go. So we can't normalize that. We have to continue to speak up and out and have each other's backs. And I just offer people to think about the myriad of ways you can stand in your own power and use your voice, and also your citizenship, and just be reminded of how valuable it is to be, in our case, an American citizen, and not buy from companies that continue to perpetuate these harmful, toxic, misogynistic, patriarchal, just horrifying norms. So don't buy from companies that are in any way enabling or abetting this bad behavior. So we have an opportunity. There are alternatives, and I just hope that we can use our powers in a capitalist society, but also our individual voice. And then collectively, I just think that there's something really, really powerful that Sundance women, Jackie, wherever you went, Pat,
right here.
Yes, that you all have collectively organized, and I hope that it continues, and I know it will with your leadership. Thank you.
I'm going to give you 2 some water. Josh, you have some.
Well, I just want to close this out just to thank you all for your gorgeous presence today. and just to honor this space. And I'm going to cry again, even though we're going to have a dance party, so Maddie will give you logistics. But to come full circle to where we started this morning, for those that were here this morning, is, we started convening thanks to a coffee with this gorgeous human around her filmist representation that appeared at the festival. Just thank you, Jennifer, for showing up and bringing us back and your new work. Obviously, Dawn, the film you've had so many. What an honor for you to be here and feature all your incredible work. And Jennifer, thank you again for your leadership. We're going to figure out how to get your book in the States. And you brought that awareness so much forward around defamation that I wasn't aware about. Errin and Emily from the 19th for showing up. It's your first time at the festival, I heard, so thank you.
And it's our 6th birthday this week, so.
Yes. So as you leave, this magazine that we created, thanks to, I won't name them all, but it takes a village to do anything these days, is available. It's going to be online. We want to bring it to wealth managers, as we talked about, to donor networks. I'm looking at Melinda, one of the first ones to say yes to, and Molly, and I'm sure I'm missing Emily's, I'm seeing her at the back with the 19th. So just thank you to all our partners that made this possible today, and my incredible team. And we're going to figure out what this looks like maybe next year. But what I know is I'm committed to not losing a space for people to convene at the Sundance Film Festival, regardless where it is. So I just want to thank you. I know Maddie's going to thank the team, and of course, Pat.
I just want to thank you, Jackie. You started this initiative 15 years ago with the coffee, and it continued every year at the Sundance Film Festival. Many of you were there to share our stories year after year. And then today has been an enormous gift. A gift that reminds us that we can all imagine, as Jackie challenges us to do, that the future is ours to shape, and we will shape it by the stories we tell, that we support, that we fund, that we distribute, that we support in every possible way. So thank you for this, and thank you for your presence with us today.
Thank you.
Let's give one more round of applause to our esteemed panel.